So imagine you're driving down a long road in Lamar Valley in Yellowstone National Park, and you come across a place where a whole bunch of cars are pulled off to the side of the road, and people are standing outside with cameras and binoculars and sitting in lawn chairs, um, just looking across the valley. At dots on the other side of a long winding stream. You pull over, right? If you're on that road, you pull over, right? Well, you're in Yellowstone, so that basically tells you that there's animals. Well, a few years earlier, wolves were reintroduced into Yellowstone, and for our first anniversary, my husband and I wanted to take a trip to Yellowstone. I was so excited when we got there and we found out that the park rangers were giving a presentation on the newly reintroduced wolves and how it was going so far. We found out a lot about the newly reintroduced bonded pack, but the most memorable thing that I learned that night is that the pack had kicked out two younger male wolves, rogue wolves. Eek! The ranger talked about the possibility of a second pack eventually being formed. Wolves are one of my favorite animals, and in 1995 and 1996, when they were reintroduced to Yellowstone, I remember being fascinated by this and wondering why they had ever been removed from Yellowstone in the first place. So I learned about it, and I have been ever since. Wolves once covered the landscape in western Northern America, but at least in America, as settlers moved west, the clash between livestock and predatory animals became a serious issue. Of course, this is understandable when taken into historical context. Yellowstone and the people that ran it were even caught up in wanting to get rid of this and other predatory animals. This started from its inception in 1872, regardless of the congressional act clearly stating that the Secretary of the Interior shall provide against the wanton destruction of the fish and game found within said park. Sadly, as the National Park Service website explains, between 1914 and 1926, at least 136 wolves were killed in the park. By 1940, wolf packs were rarely reported. By the mid-1900s, wolves had been almost entirely eliminated from the 48 states. This was done mostly to protect agriculture and livestock areas, but also to protect the encroaching human populations and human hunting activities. Up until the 1990s, there were no known evidence of wolves in Yellowstone, and the only known pack establishment was in Montana. Environmental and animal activists in the 1960s and 70s started to bring the loss of the North American gray wolves into the light by showing that there is a missing link in the western ecosystem. In 1978, all subspecies of the wolf were added to the lower 48 state endangered species list. Then, after a lot of scientific studies and public advocacy, in 1995 and 1996, wolves were finally brought back into Yellowstone. This has proven to be mostly a good thing. Since the wolves had been reintroduced, the elk population has been returned to a healthy level that allows plant life to flourish, which allows other animal life to also balance out. Even though there may be other causes that also contribute to the balance of the Yellowstone ecosystem, one sign of this balance is the beaver population, which has risen from one known beaver habitat to 8 known beaver habitats throughout Yellowstone. Wolves also help other animals to find food, especially scavenger animals like ravens, bald eagles, coyotes, and even the great grizzly bear. When wolves kill an elk, bison, moose, or other animal, they do not cover the carcass after they finish eating, even though coyotes and wolves do not necessarily get along, and at first the coyote population declined. But even this allowed for other species to make a comeback, like rodents and birds. While the reintroduction of the gray wolf to Yellowstone was met with opinions on both sides, there has been 25 years of those magnificent animals back in their home where they belong. As we stood around trying to figure out what people were looking at, a generous and kind stranger let us look through their telescope. I nearly started to cry as the dots became a wolf pack following a sick and dying bison. I was able to see the alpha male and female move in for the kill, as the bison collapsed and the rest of the pack just waited. When it was their turn and the alphas gave the signal, they pounced. The crowd became excited, but we came to find out that it was for a different reason. A grizzly bear was slowly meandering towards the wolf pack, eating the bison. As we watched it get close enough for the pack to know of its presence and not to feel alarmed. As the pack finished eating, the grizzly slowly moved in. That was a cool once in a lifetime experience that I will always remember. But an experience later that evening was even more memorable. We left the park to go get dinner that night, and when we came back into the park, we were traveling along a road near a stream. The lights of our car lit up a deer in the middle of the stream drinking, and a couple of seconds later, I saw two pairs of glowing eyes with then the outline of two wolves. From what we saw, there were no other wolves around, and I immediately knew we saw the rogue wolves that the ranger talked about. We were able to go back and take really bad photos. This was before digital photography was even remotely a thing. But I still have those photos because wolves are amazing, and this is probably the closest I'll ever get to one. Thank you.